No matter if you're fishing at a lake, a pond, a river, if you get this one thing right, you're bound to get more bites. I'm talking about choosing the right hook for the application that you're fishing. I used to stand side by side my dad and not catch nearly as many fish as him. And the main difference was the hook that I was using. I was either using too big of a hook, too small of a hook, just not the right hook in general. And when I finally listened to my dad and changed hooks to what he was using, I actually started catching more fish. So now I'm gonna pass on what my dad taught me to you. So let's start with understanding hook size. And honestly, I struggled with this for a while because there's two ways to measure hooks and they're both like opposite. So one is the number system, so like size 1 hook or a size 8 hook, and then one is the Aught system, 1 Aught or an 8 Aught. And they measure them in opposites. So like for the number system, a number 1 hook is way bigger than a number 8 hook. But flip that around for the Aught system, and an 8 Aught hook is a lot bigger than a 1 Aught hook. Super confusing, I know, I get it, but usually packages are labeled, so it's easier to understand when you look at it at the store, look at it to buy it online, and you see a package of number 1 hooks or 1 Aught hooks. You can hold them side by side and see the difference. There's a very big difference. All right, so let's start with when to use our first type of hook. These are bait hooks. Now I'm talking Aberdeen hooks, mosquito hooks, circle hooks. Most of these hooks are really used in like catfishing and obviously when you're using live bait. So you might use a small mosquito hook or a small circle hook when you're using minnows, or when you put a live earthworm on your hook to go bass fishing, to go catch some bluegill, to catch crappie, or to catch catfish, whatever you're fishing for. These are the hooks you're generally gonna use for bait, live bait, cut bait, that kind of scenarios. Inline hooks, like this one, these are used in a different couple scenarios. First of all, people attach these to a spinnerbait as a trailer hook. So if you hear somebody talking about a trailer hook on the spinnerbait, that's an inline hook. Another time that people use these is trading these out for a treble hook on like a crankbait or a topwater. The reason we do this is because fish might be swiping at your spinnerbait and just barely missing it, while having that extra hook on there will get you more bites. People switch out the treble hook for the inline because treble hooks are notorious for letting fish go. And you would think, oh, well, 3 hooks, better chances to hook the fish. Yes, but they also get caught more, and it actually gives the fish a little bit more leverage to get off, where that 1 hook hooks really good and keeps the fish pinned to your hook. So this is where I used to get confused a lot as a new angler, and it was all the different kinds of worm hooks. You know, people say use a worm hook for soft plastics, and they're right, but there's like 15 different worm hooks. So where the heck do I start? There's straight shank hooks, there's Nico hooks, offset worm hooks, and EWG hooks. And I'm sure I'm leaving some out somewhere that you can comment down below, whatever I'm leaving out. But my point is, there's a lot of them, and knowing when to throw what will help you catch more fish. Honestly, my go-to hook 9 times out of 10 is an EWG worm hook, an extra wide gap worm hook, like this one right here. Thanks to the extra wide gap. So all that's referring to is this little indentation down here, and it gives the plastic somewhere to go when the fish bites and get out of the way so you can hook the fish. While it's not always necessary, generally an extra wide gap hook is gonna do the job. Whenever I need a subtle presentation, or say for instance fishing a wacky rig, I've started using a Nico hook, and it's just a very small little hook that allows the soft plastic to fall more naturally, and I've gotten a lot more bites when I started switching to this. A Nico hook is also obviously for Nico rigging. I'll use them for like drop shotting. It's real similar to a drop shot hook. It's just a smaller hook that's a lot more delicate and great for more finessey kind of presentation. And then an offset worm hook. It's similar to an EWG. You might think it looks very similar, but it doesn't have that extra wide gap part of it. It's a straight shank after the initial bend. And I use an offset worm hook when my soft plastics are a little bit smaller, thinner, and I don't have to worry about the plastic getting in the way when the fish bites my hook. There's also combination hooks, like say a swim bait with a blade on it, or a swing head jig, or a Tokyo rig hook. And of course, there's things like shaky head and swim bait hooks. All these combination hooks have a weight attached to them, have extra pieces of metal hanging on there just to change up the presentation a little bit, and they're used in various circumstances. Obviously, swim bait hooks, using a swim bait. Tokyo rig, when you're rigging up a Tokyo rig. Shaky head, when you're fishing a shaky head. So on and so forth. And honestly, I don't think the beginner needs most of these rigs. I find myself venturing more towards the simplistic side of things and still catching fish instead of buying all this other gear and not getting a lot of benefit out of it. In other words, I don't see the combination hooks being so much better that you need to go buy every single one of them. I think you need to find a couple and stick with those. For me, it's the shaky head 100% of the time. I absolutely, not 100% of the time, but I absolutely love fishing a shaky head. And I also really like that swing head jig. On to our last hooks, the treble hooks. These are pretty simple in my opinion. I fish treble hooks on crankbaits, on some top waters, and of course using live bait like live worms, maybe even stink bait at times. But generally it's on hard plastic lures is when I use a treble hook. And while they're great for, yes, getting a bite, they can also be very prone to getting hung up and make your day very frustrating, especially if you're fishing like in grass or really brushy areas. Sometimes treble hooks just aren't the way to go when fishing lures. And speaking of lures, if you want to learn how to pick out the right lures, that video is down below me, and I'll see you there.